Hey guys, I'm Rachel Castile and welcome to Typology Corner. Today I'm going to continue the OPS Basic series and talk about the sexual modalities. As of now, this is kind of my conclusion of the basics, and I will expand, I guess, deeper on this in the future. But today, this is going to be just an overview, a full picture of what the sexual modalities are. So it's another layer on the functions and looking at the masculinity of a function or the femininity of the function. And it's also connected to our learning styles. So we, could be kinesthetic primary, we can be audio, visual, tester, and it's related to how our functions are oriented, whether they're masculine or feminine. And yeah, it's really cool. This is something that they track, and it's kind of like that last piece to kind of add to the whole puzzle of knowing your type. So to get into that a little bit more, let's move over to a kind of visual here to help make sense of all of this. So there are 4 types that are being tracked, and these letter codes here, we've got masculine, right? So a double masculine, we have a masculine feminine, a feminine masculine, and then a double feminine. So how that's made up, the first letter represents your sensory function. So the sensory part of you, you're recognizing the facts, just the pure details of something, whether it is masculine or feminine, is being tracked in the first letter. And then the second letter is tracking your extroverted decider. This is your function that is your tribe interaction function, how you approach the people around you, your extroverted decider, DE, whether you do that in a masculine way or if you do it in a feminine way. So with those 2 things, you get these 4 options here. And you're going to see later that they're connected to the learning styles, that each of these groups has a primary way that they learn from information. So, so just to get into that a little bit more, masculine has a shovey solidness about it. It's immovable. It wants to push, in a sense, what it knows. It wants to push its agenda in a sense. There's a part of each one of us that has a place that it's what we're going to move others with instead of just be moved upon, in a sense. And then we all have feminine aspects of our makeup, and in our feminine functions, we are more movable. We're more open. We want to be moved upon. We want to be influenced, in a sense. Like, we're open. We're not. That's not the area in which we push. So yeah. And then in a sensory specific way, like what that looks like for the sensory, when you do have masculine sensory, you have a more solid version of the past. And what this looks like is being good with dates and timelines, having like a specific order that you're seeing your memories in, like a timeline, the best way to say it. You're able to kind of reference, okay, that was 2 years ago, that was in March, and then right after that in April this happened. And just your memories are kind of laid out in that date, like a solid timeline of events. If you have an easy ability, I guess, that it, comes naturally to you to just pull up the files of the dates and things, being very solid on, no, this happened this way. I remember all these particular details stood out to me. We did this, and then we did this, then we went over here, and then the next day we went here, the next weekend. Like, you're able to like kind of file through the timeline. That is what masculine sensory looks like. So for people who have feminine sensory, it's much more visual. It's like, okay, I retained these images, these visuals from what happened, but I don't remember all the details. I don't remember when exactly it was. It's kind of hard to say what year that was. It was kind of back here. It's more fuzzy. And this works on a coin. So if you do have masculine sensory, that means that your intuition is feminine, and vice versa. If you have feminine sensory, then you're more solid on your concepts. You're more solid on the underlying pattern in something, And that's solid for you. Like you see the pattern very strongly. So this is another layer on the functions. It's not even about whether that function is a savior or a demon for you. It's just what's solid and what's fuzzy. And it's a whole nother layer of variation within saviors and demons of your own processes. So now for the extroverted decider, this is again your interaction with people, how you approach interaction. People who have a masculine extroverted decider, they are more blunt, they're more direct, they're more pushy on the tribe. There's almost a sense, I guess, they are not so solid on their identity. Therefore, they're pushing on the outside world because the inside is more movable. So again, it works on a coin. So those that are masculine with their extroverted decider are more feminine with their inner world and their own personal identity. And then for those who have a feminine extroverted decider, they are more movable with the tribe. They talk more easily and more fluid with people. They're less in your face. They're more just kind of go with the flow with people. They have a more easygoing approach when communicating because they are welcoming being moved by the tribe. And a masculine approach is very different. It's more pushy, and people will feel that difference. And the feminine extroverted decider has a more solid, immovable identity internally. Therefore, people moving on them and them being like movable with people, it's not affecting their identity because their identity is very solid. That is where their masculine part of them is. It's on the inside. They're, they are very immovable. Therefore, they can be more fluid with people. So that kind of paints a picture of those spectrums. So, yeah, that's a starting overview of that. Let's see here. I'm going to move over to a little more detail and get into how they correlate with the learning styles. So again, like I said, they all have a particular way that comes natural to them to learn, and it's related to these functions. So here we go. So for the double masculine, they are kinesthetic audios first. This particularly is my type. I'm a double masculine ESTP. So I learn primarily from pushing on the information, interacting with something, really getting in with something and making sense of it. Yeah, it's that pushiness on the world around me that comes very naturally. So a couple things I'm tracking on all of these is just kind of articulating again what's solid, what's movable, what's direct, what's movable. So for the double masculine, what that looks like is being very solid on the facts, very solid on the sensory details of something, that's solid memory. And the concept is not so clear. They're like, I see it, but I'm not going to push with it. It's where I am movable. I'll be moved by the concept. I'll be moved. How do I say that? In the area of the concept, I'm more open. You can think of open with the underlying what's going on, but the facts of the situation, that's what I'm like locked on to. That's what I will push on, in a sense, on the details of something. And then your double masculines are also direct with the tribe. They're direct. They've got that direct DE, and but more movable on the identity. So not so much got a specific internal thing etched out that I will fight on. I'm more movable in that area, but can be direct and very blunt in a sense with how I communicate things with other people. So it's a starting tendency or the way the functions are oriented. So Yeah. And again, that looks totally different based on what type you are. As an ESTP, that looks different than what it would look like in another type. But yeah, that is what I guess the fundamental trait is, like that interactive style, wanting to grab, wanting to learn, wanting to grab the object, look at the object, smell the object, and learn by being in the information. It's like by poking you, I find out what you are in a sense. I think I've described that a bit in being an extroverted sensor. That's probably all mixed in there too. Anyways, so next we've got MF. This is audio kinesthetic. So more of an audio over the kinesthetic, but they're both there. But learning based on just audio, based on listening, hearing something. They learn best in that way. They're also solid on the sensory, solid on the facts. Got that timeline sort of memory going on. And then and also movable on the concept. So the concept is more fuzzy. It's more not as clear to them. They can see it, but it's not. I won't say that it's not clear. It's not where they're closed-minded, I guess. They're open. They're movable is the best way to describe that. Again, as a dominant extroverted sensor, my intuition is my lowest function, so I don't want to describe that. I don't want to layer my own weakness on the concepts, but it just means it's where you don't fight on it, I guess. You're more open to receiving from the outside world in that way, to be moved upon in that area. But the sensory is like very solid, therefore you'll push with whatever is solid for you. So they are movable with the tribe in comparison to the double masculine. So you've got a person who is more open and more easygoing in their communication style. They're more receptive in that way. And also they're more solid on their identity as a result. Their internal world is they're more sure of who they are, and that's the part where they become immovable. If someone coming in and influencing their identity would be a lot harder than it would be with the double masculine. The double masculine, if you get past their like hard exterior, they're actually very feminine on the inside and very movable, very open to, on the identity, because it's not as defined. They're not so locked on to something particular like you would have with someone who is a feminine extroverted decider. Their inner world is much more rock solid. That's where they will fight you, basically. The double masculine will appear like they're fighting everyone, but really it's coming from an inner world that's not really locked onto much. And then your easygoing one is more fluid with people because they're at rest in their own identity. And this is, again, still not where the functions are located. It's just whether it's masculine or whether it's feminine. So yeah, that's a summary of that. Then we've got feminine, masculine. We got our FM type, and they are primarily visual learners with tester as a secondary modality. And what that looks like, they learn based on visual images. They just have a very good visual memory, I would say. I don't know that memory is the right word, but yeah, it is memory related, but they're just visual people and learn well with visuals. So yeah, it's beyond just memory. But yeah, they are solid on their concepts. So they're kind of locked on to the patterns that they're seeing. And that's where they're immovable. That's where they're like, no, I know what's going on. I know what's happening in this situation. Okay, the details, I don't really know. I don't really remember the details, or I can't really give you all the why as to why I know this or why I believe this, but I know this is going to happen. They're solid on what they're seeing in that sense. They trust their concepts very strongly, and that's where you'll feel the push from them is on the concept alone. And the details are more fuzzy, or, they're not going to fight on the details because they're like, I I know the pattern. I know what's going on here. So yeah. And their memory is more fuzzy. It's more, I remember certain aspects, certain pictures. I got specific images from the past. I remember what so and so was wearing. I remember this smell or something like that, right? That they've retained these visuals, these experiences within the memory, but a timeline like the masculine sensory people is not so much that way. It's like, I can't really remember when it was. I just remember seeing this. I remember this aspect from it, like these pictures and certain things that they've retained, but it's not so laid out in this like order of time. What else can I say about them? So yeah, I think that kind of covers that's what the sensory looks like, and the concepts are much more solid for them. And yeah, this all kind of goes together with being visual. So they are direct. The FMs are direct with the tribe. So they are blunt. They are speak very, directly with people. They will push on the people and be movable on the self. So, yeah, not a super fight you on their own identity, but they're going to push on people more direct in the way that they communicate. And then lastly, we've got the double feminines. So they are tester primary with visual secondary. And what tester kind of looks like, the way I've heard it described, it's characterized by being open. It's like the double open person. So they are like open to the information. So it's like, I've heard it described in like smelling candles and kind of just being open to like smelling things and testing things and like that interaction with stuff, because there's that double openness. So there's a testerness about them. It's that double feminine approach to the outside world of letting the world move them on both levels. Yeah, just a general openness about them. And they also are visual more so than that kinesthetic pushing on stuff, breaking stuff. And then the audio that kind of lives in the more masculine side of things. Your double feminines, they are learning more through openness, through being moved upon. So again, the movable sensory people, they are solid on the concept. So they will have this trait as well where they're seeing the patterns, and the patterns is what they're living by more so. The pattern is, and I say living by, that starts to get into the savior and demon conversation. So this is just the orientation of the functions that they have. So their concept function, their intuition function will be masculine. So whether that is like their last function, it'll be masculine, that will be more solid for them. So they can even lead with sensory as a first function, but it's feminine. So it's more movable. It's not so locked on to the sensory, even though they could be a savior sensory person. So these modalities apply over the spectrum of all of the types who have all of the different savior options and stuff. So I just want to make a point to describe this in what aspect it applies to. So, their intuitive function is masculine, and then their sensory function is feminine, more movable on the sensory information, and they're movable with people as well. So they are very go with the flow with people. They're letting other people move them. They're not as blocky when interacting with people. They're more just fluid. They're more, they like that. Just they're receptive, I think is the best way to say it. They just genuinely are receptive to the world around them. They like being moved upon socially. And they're more solid internally. They have that solid identity. Therefore, they're not worried about their internal moving in them being movable with people. That's just their approach. When you get to the core of them, if you push on them, you're going to encounter that masculine identity inside. And you're like, yep, there they are. So, yeah, that's a bit of what double feminine looks like. So you can see the contrast of being really moved upon, and your double masculine is moving on the world around them completely. They're a force that is pushing around them, and the double feminine is being, receiving that. And then your other two are a mix. You've got a mix of being movable in an outside way with the tribe, or being, moved upon, with the other aspect being like masculine, or yeah, basically I'm just saying it's a mix. So now I'm going to get into some examples, because some of this that I'm explaining, you'll see it applies kind of in a diverse way depending on what the functions are, because some people's sensory functions are internal, like introverted sensing, and that's going to look totally different than a sensory function that's extroverted, but it still functions the same way and being solid on the facts either way. So I'm going to run through some examples just so you can see this applied over different types and different orders, and to see these variations in how they show up. So this particular one, we've got a double masculine and then a masculine feminine example. So here's an ENTJ, and I've just overlaid these function orientations. So it being double masculine, first thing means that the sensory is masculine. So where's their sensory function? It's their third right here. So it's a masculine function. They're solid on this, and their intuition is more feminine here. And then the next one is talking about the extroverted decider, and theirs is extroverted thinking. So it's masculine as well. So this particular ENTJ, the way it looks, you can see their internal world is very movable internally, but in their approach to the world around them, they're very pushy on the details, and they're more blunt in their communication of their extroverted thinking when communicating with the tribe. And yeah, so this is your double masculine ENTJ sort of setup. And then here we've got an example of a masculine feminine ENFP. So again, I'm just putting down their functions and then applying the sexual modality onto the functions here. So we head over to the masculine sensory, and for them, their sensory function is their last function. So we know it is masculine, and then it works on an axis, so their intuition is feminine. So here we go, we've got a masculine sensory, but their dominant function is a feminine process. So they're very solid on the details, even though that they are an intuitive type. They won't push on these patterns that they're seeing all day long constantly. It's their savior function. They're seeing all of these patterns and everything that's occurring around them, all these possibilities, all of these simulations and guesses on what's happening around them, what's really going on. All this is happening primarily in them, but where they push is on the details. So this is a person who is actually more masculine, even though this is their inferior demon function down here. So this is why I wanted to show this, because as I was describing how this plays out, you start to see the variations that this is a masculine. They have a masculine way with their sensory information, and this strong masculine could pop out and could make you think, oh, I'm dealing with a sensor type. And it's like, nope, it's just their sensory is masculine. They very much got their timeline, they got their details, but it's a demon function. It'll come out in a demon state, in a sense. Like, it's not their most comfortable process to be using this, but when it comes out very confident. It comes out matter of fact in a masculine way. And they're more movable on these concepts up here. And then, so their next thing, their extroverted decider is feminine. So for them, it is TE as well in the ENFP, just like it was up here. And theirs is feminine. So their interaction with the tribe is more movable. It's more not so pushy with people in the way that they communicate their extroverted thinking process. And in contrast, that means their identity is masculine because they work on an axis. So their introverted feeling is solid. They know who they are. They know what they want. They know what they like. They know what they dislike. And that's the immovable part of them. That's where they'll fight. That's where they'll push. And not so much pushing on the tribe and what people need to do. They're not ordering people around with their extroverted thinking in the way that they communicate it. It's more suggestive and open to the people, and so, and if you look at this, the way it turned out for this type, they've got a double masculine sort of inner world with a more movable approach in the way that they interact with people. So they're being moved upon on the extroverted world, and internally they're rock solid. And just to show this, based on this having this introverted sensing, this is a MF type. And you might assume, oh, a double masculine up here had double masculine on the outside, feminine on the inside. But it didn't. That's not how it works out, considering what the functions are for this type. So the MF looks this way. All right, so let's do a couple more. So here we've got our feminine masculine example, and then our double feminine. And again, I chose these functions that aren't the extroverted sensing, which is the way I guess it can make more sense. And so I wanted to demonstrate the one that can kind of flip in the way you would interpret this. So because the function's internal, making, the extroverted intuition, whatever the opposite of that sensory thing is. So in other words, masculine sensory doesn't mean masculine extroverted process. It's wherever the sensory is. So we've got our INTP, and for them, so we have feminine sensory, which is their third function here. And so they've got this process here, but it's not super solid. Their memory is more fuzzy, more visual in that sense. This is our visual type here, in the way that they remember things. And then when it comes to the masculine extroverted decider, that is their very last function down here. So this is masculine, but it's a demon function here for them. And so they're actually leading with a feminine process up top, and then a masculine, and then a feminine, and then a masculine. And again, for this type, in being a visual, we've got another double feminine, movable inside, pushy outside, in a sense. Extroverted processes. And then our double feminine example, we've got an ISFJ. These are their functions. And we have a feminine sensory function and then a feminine extroverted decider. And for this type, it's their first two functions. So their sensory is their first one. It's feminine. Though it's the first one, they're not pushing all that much on it. They'll be more masculine with their concepts. They'll see the concept and push on, oh, this is what's going on in the situation. I'm not going to push on with the details about it, but I'm going to push with the masculine intuition. Even though it's a demon, that is where they're immovable, is in the pattern of what's happening in something, whatever that intuitive guess is. They are confident here and more movable here. And then in the way that they communicate with the tribe, they're more feminine. They're open. They're receptive in the way that they interact with people. They're letting the tribe move them. They're accommodating in that way. And because they have the more internal, masculine, immovable, introverted thinking, that's where they're solid. That's where they're immovable. That's where they will push. If, the topic of things pertaining to that come up, that's where they are solid and have a bit of a resolve about their introverted thinking. So, lastly, I'm going to, I got a couple of things. I'm going to get into the ESTP because as an ESTP, I think this is something I can explain pretty good. I liked the idea of displaying one type and kind of showing the different variations. So this is a bit different from how the last few types I showed that were introverted sensing. So for types that have extroverted sensing, they're, if it's masculine, then you just know you've got a masculine extroverted type of push in that way. It's going to have that orientation. It'll show up in the world a bit easier in that way. in the facts that they lock onto and fight with, in a sense. So to kind of get into this, let's see. So the double feminine for them really is double feminine extroverted functions and then double masculine internal world here. So you got a very immovable internal person with a very fluid way of interacting with the world around them. You don't bump into their masculinity unless you really encounter the inner world of that person. So they're more fluid and more open in their communication with people. And also, they're not gonna shove with the facts. They're going to be more masculine in the intuition of knowing where something's going, knowing, they'll be resolute in what's going to happen, or, the behind the scenes, what the pattern is, which is interesting. As an ESTP, you're seeing they're not pushing with their sensing. They're not pushing with that extroverted feeling. But yeah, that's basically what a double feminine looks like. And we're getting into, and again, this is our tester type. So again, just really open to what's around them. And then we've got our feminine masculine type, which is our visual. And they have, dominant extroverted sensing, but that's not where they're pushing. They're not pushing with their first function. They're pushing with their demon function more. When it comes out, that's where they'll be masculine. When it comes to the information of things. And their approach with people is more direct. It's more blunt. It's more telling the tribe what to do. They're more pushy on, influencing. I guess one way to say it, they're more influential in the way of like telling, hey, we need to do this for extroverted feeling reasons. We need to go and do this, right? So an extroverted, that blunt extroverted decider is more directing of people in a sense. But their inner world is more feminine. Their inner thinking, their inner understanding of things. And then now we're getting into the masculine types. We've got our MF type. This is our audio type of ESTP. And so we've got solid on the facts. They're pushy with the facts. They're seeing the facts. They're seeing the timelines. They've got that memory that's very solid, and that's where they're going to push. And it's in an extroverted way, or it's on an extroverted function. Therefore, it will manifest. It'll be readily apparent when you meet them, considering it's the first function and it's masculine. Let's see. So in contrast, they've got the feminine intuition. So they're not going to be super pushy on what they're seeing. They can see stuff about, they have their intuitive guesses on the patterns of what's going on. Their own personal kind of knowings about stuff, or their guesses, or their assumptions, or that abstract connections that they're seeing in the information. They can be aware of it, but that's not where they're going to be immovable. They're not going to be so solid with that. They're going to be using them details to really make their points, to push, And then, let's see here. But the way they interact with the tribe is just like the visual type. Not the visual, like the double feminine. We've got those feminine, extroverted deciders here. So they are, very, more open. They're not as conflict causing, I guess is one way to say it. They are, more, I need to plug in my phone, it's saying. But yeah, they are more, give me a second. I want my phone to die. It's my secondary camera here. Okay, there we go. But yeah, they're more open. They're not as pushy. They're more receptive. My words are getting a little redundant, but essentially they are feminine with the tribe. Yeah. So, and then looking at our double masculine, this is my type. And I do have another slide I'm going to show just to kind of bring it all together. Like, sexual modalities is like that last piece of the puzzle. So I'm going to show it all connected. The animals, the saviors and demons, everything all connected. But so this is how I function basically. I'm solid on my facts. I am masculine in my communication with people. I am direct. And I come back always looking at growth in this. It kind of means you start in a certain place. So your growth path in becoming kind of rounded out, or seeing your tendencies, seeing how you affect people. There's a lot of aspects that go into this. It's our given approaches and the way that we interact, and the way we communicate, and the way, we use our influence, and the way that we make our impact, I guess, best way to say it. The way we coexist, really. This is looking at how we coexist as we bump into each other, maybe that's a very masculine way of saying that. But yeah, as we interact, you can recognize the different tendencies of other people, the way that there's value in all of these variations. There's value in being very solid on the identity. There's value in being very solid with the tribe. It's like a different tool for a different setting, for a different purpose, Yeah, so all of that being said, back to the double masculine. So yeah, that's pushy in the outside world with a super movable internal world. I've very much experienced this. My thinking is always ever moving. My intuition is always ever moving, and I'm very movable in those areas. With the double masculine approach to the world, I might not appear that way to people upon meeting me or, talking with me, but that's a very true thing, that the inner world is movable, but there's that harder exterior that's pushing. I think as a way of, I don't know if it's like vetting what gets to go into the very immovable inside, maybe. That's kind of my concept of it right now. And then looking at a contrasting type like the double feminine, this is so rock solid. They can be super movable out here because nothing's really coming in and changing these. It's a very solid internal world, but your double masculine has a different, it's very pushy because this is a very movable thing internally. So bit of a contrast. And then you got your mixes here, where it's kind of a bit of both. You've got like a balancedness between their feminine and masculine parts of themselves. And these are more directly very fluid, and then very hard, and then very hard, and then very fluid. So yeah, again, this changes based on the functions, but I think I wanted to demonstrate this with a type that had an extroverted sensing function like this, so it could be kind of a clean display of what that can look like. So lastly, I'm going to wrap it all up with my full OP type, just to show what that looks like whenever you're taking that masculine or your sexual modalities that are coloring the type of your core type. And then this is whether you're a jumper or a standard type. And then here's the animal stack order. And then you get the full objective personality typing right here. And this expands into 512 types. Crazy. It's a lot. But it's amazing because these are real variations. And there's lots of YouTubers who are doing interviews, and you can see people who have been officially typed and getting to see their different color of the type that they are. And it's really amazing. So, but yeah, this is how it all comes together. You start off with your type, you got your cognitive functions, and then you're looking at which ones are saviors, which ones are demons. For me in particular, these are my two saviors. These are my two demon processes. These come more naturally to me to choose to be in this sort of space. These are ones I'm working on, doing more in my life, getting more balanced. And then we've got the masculinity and the femininity of the functions attached. So these are both masculine outside, feminine on the inside. And then our animals right here, this is my animal order. We've got consume, and then play, then blast, and then sleep. And just displaying what functions make up those animals. So this is the consume animals working together. These two functions make up play. These two functions make up blast. These two make up sleep. And then these are the types of consume, the type of play, the type of blast, the type of sleep. So this is an overall picture of what getting your OP type looks like. It is understanding all of these aspects of yourself and going from there, going from just a true read of what you're doing, how you're wired, what are your go-to addictions in a sense, what you're used to, how you're used to interacting, and then you can kind of see, okay, how's that working for me? Like, is there some way I can improve this? Is something I'm doing in the way of my growth? Is it causing me to be stuck in life? Is it causing problems in my relationships? Is it am I happy with the life I'm living, And how can I evolve? How can I grow? How can I develop as the type that I am? And the type path is very unique to the type that you are. And I'm going to get into the Enneagram a lot more because that's another aspect. The OP type is kind of like, I would call it nature in a sense. It's the type that you're born as. It's genuinely just the way you're wired. It's your go-to things you've been doing your whole life, and it's not something like in the Enneagram that is more highly related to like coping strategies, things you've walked through, So it's another aspect of our humanity. But our OP type is amazing. It really is. It's the lens you're living, interacting with the world through. It's the way you are made up to do what you're put on the earth to do. It's it's your code, I guess. It's the code in the way that you're wired, your DNA of who you are and your approach to everything. And it's a starting place. And when you look at the whole cognitive stack, that's what you have access to. And you can learn to grow. You can learn to access the other functions, or just to be aware of how they work so that you can hire that in someone else. If you're working on a project, you can hire other gifting so you can see that they're strong where you're not, and things like that. So yeah, it's really great to understand yourself, to understand others, and so we can all do the things we're put on earth to do, to build the communities that's in our hearts, to build to everything, like all the different passions and purposes of life. But yeah, so that's the sexual modalities. It's really awesome. I guess a last thing to kind of put on this that I honestly think is very, very important. Let's talk about actual gender. So females and males. As you can see within these types, this is completely unrelated to gender. So you can have double masculine women. You can have double feminine men. You can have all of these varieties. You can have very bold women who are very pushy, who really, they interact in a very direct way. They are blunt in their communication. Or you can have men who are more movable and more open and more kind of soft in the way that they interact, and that they have that gift of like that sensitivity, or they are very secure internally, so they're more fluid in the way that they approach the world around them, and it's very unrelated to gender. So I think that is one of the best things about the sexual modalities is just understanding that the orientation of your functions is the orientation of your functions. We all have masculine aspects. We all have feminine aspects of ourselves. And where they show up is where they show up. There is balance in all of us. We all have these aspects within us. And some people are over-identifying or feeling that certain traits are only appropriate in a man, or they're only appropriate in a woman. And really, they're just human traits. These are human personalities. And every person should be every bit of what they are, and to live to the fullest as the way that they're wired. This, has the term sexual modalities, but it has nothing to do with sexual orientation. This is just innate wiring in the way we are. And I just think we all need to embrace where we're blunt and where we're soft, and learn how to interact with other people in a way that is honorable and respectful of other people, to learn to love yourself and to love others, but also don't conform who you are in order to fit a societal stereotype of how you should be. Get comfortable in your own skin and being who you are, and live your life, be the best you, and continue to grow and develop. So, all right, guys, that is it for the objective personality basics as of now. I feel like this is a pretty good summary, and from here I'll go on to talking about the different types, get more into what that looks like to be the various 16 personalities, the 32 kind of overview. And yeah, so I'm excited for the content to come on the channel and getting into the Enneagram and things, and just to kind of keep expanding all of this type knowledge. So if you got value out of this, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. And subscribe for future content. And I will see y'all on the next one. Take care.